Hi there, and welcome to Marvel and Mysteries. My name is Tracy. We have an expression in the United States, measure twice, cut once. And that indicates that whatever it is that you're doing, that you better measure twice and make the cut once, because otherwise you're going to waste time and materials and energy. And if you're in carpentry, then you know before you cut a 2x4, you're going to make sure that you measure it, that it fits right, because once the cut is made, there is no going back. The expression actually was derived from a Russian expression, but they took it to a completely different level because theirs is to measure 7 times, cut once. So they're being very, very particular, and it was generally used in carpentry, but then also in needlework, they had used that too. There are similar expressions through history, and there's a lot of argument over to which one was first and all of that. But there's one that is so, I don't know, it makes an indelible mark on your mind. And this is a unique Gallic expression that's found in a book published in 1785 entitled A Collection of Gallic Proverbs and Familiar Phrases based on Mackintosh's collection. And so Gallic is the Scottish way to say what we would know in the US. We hear it a lot of times like from an Irish pronunciation of Gaelic. So that was something that I learned that was new. Gaelic, Irish, Gallic, Scottish. So that's why it's that. So again, the name of that is A Collection of Gallic Proverbs and Familiar Phrases based on Mackintosh's collection. So the proverb says, better measure short of 7 than spoil all at once. So this expression arose out of men's kilt making because the average size guy requires 7 yards of fabric. So if you're cutting that shy, you could end up in some unexpected exposure. And if we look in the Gospel of Luke, well, we're not going to find unexpected exposure there, but we are going to find Jesus actually making a case to the disciples for what you need to do when you're thinking and undertaking a major decision or change. So you want to do that before you jump in head first. So this is in the Gospel of Luke 14. He said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, and even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. So put a pause right there. We're going to come back to that. Here's the point. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and he's not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, that man began to build and was not able to finish. So we need to sit down, we need to count the cost, we need to measure twice, measure 7 times, cut once, and make sure that you've got enough fabric to cover yourself, right? But I want to go back and take a slight detour to the beginning of the verse about hating fathers and mothers, because this plays into it. This word is often translated as hate, is not how many translators actually would say that that word is used in this particular verse. And if you look in your Strong's Concordance and you start looking up hate and how that word is used, you're going to discover some different things. The point is that in this verse, translators look at that to mean love less. So instead of this coming across like, if anyone comes to me, they must hate their entire families and hate their own lives, you're going to have to love them less. It's loving less. It's a loving less of other things, loving, and the Lord is first place, and you're loving other things less. So an example of this same usage of this word is also in Genesis chapter 29. And if you think back to the story of Jacob, when he was working 7 years, that he would obtain Rachel for his life because of the crooked Uncle Laban. He gets tricked into marrying Leah. And so he loved Rachel, but he was tricked into Leah in that marriage covenant. So Genesis 29:31 says, and when the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So this is another example. And when the Lord saw that Leah was loved less, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. So this loving something less plays into making major decisions. But first, if we look at a quick recap from what Jesus said, when you're going to make some kind of a life-changing decision, as the disciples of his day, it was no joke. It wasn't, oh, you're going to follow Jesus and maybe somebody's going to laugh and make fun of you. It was a life or death thing. And it is a life or death thing for many Christians across the world, but we don't often hear about it. In the United States, we don't hear about the persecution and the slaughter and things like that unless you're looking for it, unless you're tapped in. And of course, the intercessors that are receiving information from the Lord all of the time who keep those folks in prayer. But when we're about to make a life-changing decision, we ought to do what Jesus said in the Gospel of Luke, which is number one, sit down. Sitting down forces your body to relax, of course. And then if you allow your mind to relax, then you can hear better. If you get into peace from the Lord, you can hear his voice better. You can hear your own thoughts better. You can process your own thoughts better. So we should sit down and take a moment just to breathe. And then number two is to count the cost. Sit down and look, what is it going to take? What do I need to do? How is this going to change things? How does this change my life, my routine, relationships, taking a look at different time thieves and things like that. And I just think of how often do we feel a pressure about making a decision. It's like really hard to decide sometimes because there are so many, it seems like so many opposing voices of things that we can do. And there is a multitude of counsel that is in a multitude of counselors. And that's a good thing, but sometimes that can equate to too many voices that are speaking into your life at that time. And so you need to know for yourself, and you also need to hear the Lord. And of course, those who do speak that wisdom of the Lord into your life, it's good to be surrounded by those people. But how many times do we kind of panic when we're making a decision, or we waffle through the process? We might acquiesce in some way to alleviate our own stress. That's a lot of the reason sometimes why people sin, because the stress just gets to be so much to not do the thing. I'm just thinking like drug addiction in particular, because that's the kind of thing that just nags and gnaws at people. In particular, any kind of addiction does, but that one just seems to be so vicious. So folks will sin just to alleviate their own stress because they're trying so hard not to. And that happens too with making decisions. The stress can be too much, and we'll just acquiesce and give in to something when we really needed to wait longer and wait to hear the Lord, wait to be in peace to do it. And then what's worse sometimes is we do nothing at all. We just don't do anything because we're so locked down, maybe even in fear of change. And then even worse than that is making a rash decision that we can regret later, because we might just step out in the wrong way, wrong place, wrong time, and then find ourselves feeling like we're in failure when we really need to stop, count the cost, and just consider before moving forward, because then at least you're making a decision that is informed. So step one, stop. Sit down and get yourself into a position of that stillness so that the peace can enter you, and you can be able to ponder the various aspects of the decision and the effects of it on you and on others. And the process of counting the cost looks at the different angles of the decision and what it really means to you, and what you need to do to get that job done, whatever it is, if it's a project, if it's starting something new, if it's a drastic change in your life. So get inside the process and think it through, do the math, and figure out what you have to work with versus what you still need, whether it's financial, educational, experiential. Might just be sitting down and talking to someone who's already been there, done that, So you're not reinventing the wheels, that you're learning from them and from their experience. So if you're planning to open, let's say, an online store or sell t-shirts or something like that, you need to be thinking about what the material costs, what maybe the shipping costs, what are you going to charge for it? It's easy to really say on a whim, oh, I'm just going to go do this. And some people have a natural entrepreneurial spirit and they can just kind of go out and throw stuff at the wall and it sticks and it works out fine. But for most of us, that's not going to be the case. We have that ability to create, but sometimes we can rush ahead of the process and not really sit and think about it. Just throw caution to the wind and fight through a bumpy process and hopefully make out all right. But thinking it through, we really need to think it through, brainstorm, and let our God-given creativity give life to the plan as we're thinking and praying through it. Sit down, consider the costs. That creative process does take time and it takes inspiration, though the quickening of the inspiration can really reduce the time needed. I'm sure that some of you have set out to do something and maybe it's as simple as you're going to clean a room or clean out a closet, but it's interesting that there are certain days when you have this flow, you have the grace to just knock it out, get it done. You feel great about it. You feel a lot of peace as you're doing it. And when you're done, you have this sense of accomplishment that accompanies it and it feels great. And then on other days, if you're going to clean out the closet, it is drudgery, it's horrible, and it's definitely not on the top 10 list of things to do that would bring you any kind of joy whatsoever. So that inspiration, that grace that comes, is you'd also pay attention to that, because when the grace is there from the Lord for you to do something, you can take advantage of that. Everything is easier. There's a flow. And so just be mindful about that. And that creative inspiration can reduce that overall time that's needed because of that. Regardless, the new project means that other things in your life will need to be loved less. Not in a disparaging kind of way, but meaning that you'll need to align with what God wants you to do. And that means a change of routine. It means identifying the time thieves. So whatever the project is, if it's that online t-shirt shop or creating educational materials, that's going to take time to come together. And so in order to do that, to research, to compile what you need to compile and all of that, you're going to need to love watching YouTube videos less, sleeping in less, and probably hobbies less. And maybe it could be any number of things in your timeline that just might be eating up what the Lord would like you to do. So you're going to have to say no or not now to other things in order to focus on what God would like you to do now. So rather than making rash decisions or doing nothing at all as life passes you by, let's do what Jesus said. Let's sit down. Let's count the cost, or as the Scots say, better short. Oh, and I'm going to mess it up right there at the end. And the Scots said, better measure short of 7 than spoil all at once. Father, thank you so much for helping us through our days. We know that your mercy is new every morning, and we pull upon that mercy today so that we can hear you, that we can apply what you have told us to do, and that we can tackle whatever it is that you have asked us to tackle, because a wrestle with you is something that when we come out of, we have our name changed, we have new strength, and we have purpose to move forward with. So we thank you for that, Holy Father, in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you for watching.